First of all, being in the world is to be made visible with regard to the structural factor, world. The accomplishment of this task appears to be easy and so trivial that we still believe we may avoid it. What can it mean to describe the world as a phenomenon? It means letting what shows itself in the beings within the world be seen. Thus, the first step is to enumerate the things which are in the world: houses, trees, people, mountains, stars. We can describe the outward appearance of these beings and tell of the events occurring with them. But that is obviously a pre-phenomenological business, which cannot be phenomenologically relevant at all. The description gets stuck in being. It is ontic, but we are after all seeking being. We formally defined phenomenon in the phenomenological sense as that which shows itself as being and the structure of being. Thus, to describe the world phenomenologically means to show and to conceptually and categorically determine the being of beings present in the world. Beings within the world are things, natural things, and things having value. Their thingliness becomes a problem, and since the thingliness of the latter is based upon natural thingliness, the being of natural things, nature as such, is the primary theme. The character of being of natural things, of substances, which is the basis of everything, is substantiality. What constitutes its ontological meaning? With this, we have given our investigation an unequivocal direction. But are we asking ontologically about the world? The problematic characterized is undoubtedly ontological. But even if it succeeds in the purest explication of the being of nature, in comparison with the fundamental statements made by the mathematical natural sciences about this being, this ontology never gets at the phenomenon of the world. Nature is itself a being which is encountered within the world, and is discoverable on various paths and stages. Should we accordingly keep to the beings with which Dasein initially and for the most part dwells, to valuable things? Do not these things really show the world in which we live? Perhaps they do in fact show something like world more penetratingly. But these things are, after all, also beings within the world. Neither the ontic description of inner worldly beings, nor the ontological interpretation of the being of these beings, gets as such at the phenomenon of world. In both kinds of access to objective being, world is already presupposed in various ways. Can world ultimately not be addressed as a determination of the beings mentioned at all? After all, we do say that these beings are inner world. Is world indeed a character of being of Dasein? And then does every Dasein initially have its own world? Does not world thus become something subjective? Then how is a common world still possible, in which we after all are? If we pose the question of world, which world is meant? Neither this nor that world, but rather the worldliness of world in general. How can we encounter this phenomenon? Worldliness is an ontological concept and designates the structure of a constitutive factor of being in the world. But we have come to know being in the world as an existential determination of Dasein. Accordingly, worldliness is itself an existential. When we inquire ontologically about the world, we by no means abandon the thematic field of the analytic of Dasein. World is ontologically not a determination of those beings which Dasein essentially is not, but rather a characteristic of Dasein itself. This does not preclude the fact that the path of the investigation of the phenomenon of world must be taken by way of inner-worldly beings and their being. The task of a phenomenological description of the world is so far from obvious that its adequate determination already requires essential ontological clarification. The multiplicity of meanings of the word world is striking now that we have discussed it and made frequent application of it. Unraveling this multiplicity can point toward the phenomenon intended in their various meanings and their connection. 1. World is used as an ontic concept and signifies the totality of beings which can be objectively present within the world. 2. World functions as an ontological term and signifies the being of those beings named in 1. Indeed, world can name the region which embraces a multiplicity of beings. For example, when we speak of the world of the mathematician, we mean the region of all possible mathematical objects. 3. Again, world can be understood in an ontic sense, but not as beings essentially unlike Dasein that can be encountered within the world, but rather as that in which a factical Dasein lives as Dasein. Here world has a pre-ontological, existential meaning. There are various possibilities here. World can mean the public world of the we or one's own and nearest domestic surrounding world. 4. Finally, world designates the ontological and existential concept of worldliness. Worldliness itself can be modified into the respective structural totality of particular worlds, but contains in itself the a priori of worldliness in general. We shall reserve the expression world as a term for the meaning established in the third meaning of world. If we use it at times in the first meaning, we shall put it in quotation marks. Thus, terminologically, worldly means a kind of being of Dasein, never a kind of being of something objectively present in the world. We shall call the latter something belonging to the world or inner world. One look at previous ontology shows us that one skips over the phenomenon of worldliness when one fails to see the constitution of Dasein as being in the world. Instead, one tries to interpret the world in terms of the being which is present within the world, but has not, however, even been initially discovered, that is, in terms of nature, plus or minus ontologically and categorically understood. Nature is a limit case of the being of possible inner-worldly being. Dasein can discover beings as nature in this sense, only in a definite mode of its being in the world. This kind of knowledge has the character of a certain de-worlding of the world. As the categorical content of structures of being of a definite being encountered in the world, nature can never render worldliness intelligible, but even the phenomenon nature, for instance in the sense of the romantic concept of nature, is ontologically comprehensible only in terms of the concept of world, that is, in terms of an analytic of Dasein. With regard to the problem of an ontological analysis of the worldliness of the world, traditional ontology is at a dead end, if it sees the problem at all. On the other hand, an interpretation of the worldliness of Dasein and its possibilities and ways of becoming worldly must show why Dasein skips over the phenomenon of worldliness ontically and ontologically in its way of knowing the world. But at the same time, this fact of skipping over the phenomenon of worldliness indicates that special measures are necessary in order to gain the correct phenomenal point of departure for access to that phenomenon, a point of departure which does not permit any skipping over. The methodological directive for this has already been given. Being in the world, and thus the world as well, must be the subject of our analytic in the horizon of average everydayness as the nearest kind of being of Dasein. We shall pursue everyday being in the world. With it as a phenomenal support, something like world must come into view. The closest world of everyday Dasein is the surrounding world Umwelt. Our investigation will follow the path from this existential character of average being in the world to the idea of worldliness as such. We shall seek the worldliness of the surrounding world, environmentality Weltlichkeit, by way of an ontological interpretation of those beings initially encountered within the surrounding. The expression surrounding world Umwelt contains a reference to spatiality in its component around, The quality of around, herum, which is constitutive for the surrounding world does not, however, have a primarily spatial meaning. Rather, the spatial character which uncontestably belongs to a surrounding world can be clarified only on the basis of the structure of worldliness. Here the spatiality of Dasein mentioned in section 12 becomes phenomenally visible. But ontology has tried precisely to interpret the being of the world as res extensa on the basis of spatiality. The most extreme tendency towards such an ontology of the world, an ontology which is oriented in the opposite direction, that is to the res cogitans which is neither ontically nor ontologically identical with Dasein, is to be found in Descartes. The analysis of worldliness attempted here becomes clearer if we show how it differs from such an ontological tendency. It has three stages. A. An analysis of environmentality and worldliness in general. B. An illustrative contrast between our analysis of worldliness and Descartes' ontology of the world. C. The aroundness umhaft of the surrounding world and the spatiality of Dasein. A. Analysis of environmentality Weltlichkeit and worldliness Weltlichkeit in general.